ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the story.
Welcome to the story.
Behind the story. December 27th, last show of 2019. Yes, folks, we're looking forward to 2020. And I love the date, the numbers, 2020. In case you've forgotten, folks, if you have really good vision, if you're not myopic, if you're not farsighted or nearsighted, you go to the eye doctor and they'll tell you, congratulations, sir or madam, you have 20/20 vision. I tell you, folks, it's a great year. I'm looking forward to a great year of vision because I'm reading in my Bible like I try to do every single day. Sometimes I can't read a lot in the Bible, but I think that's, it's great because the more I read in the Bible, the more I realize, gosh, where I just saw that before. I didn't see that last time I read it. It's something new every time, comes up and pops me. Because you see, the Bible says, without vision, the people perish. Without goals, without setting goals and understanding, the people just flat out can't survive. The prophet Hosea in the Old Testament said this, my people, the people of God, if you will, the people perish for lack of knowledge. You see, knowledge is imperative to getting a vision. Without understanding, without knowledge, how can you ever know where you're going? You see, you're bumping into the dark. You're walking around, you can't see anything because you're blind. Oh, my goodness. That's why we have this show, folks. We try and shine the light in the darkness so people can understand what's going on. And sometimes, no, not sometimes, about every time, the more truth you share, the more light you shine, the more unpopular you become, you see, because you see, it's a truism, if you will. Yeah, I'm Dr. True, and this is a truism. You see, a prophet in the Old Testament and New Testament definition of prophet is not one who says back, oh, I'm going to look in this crystal ball and foretell the future. No. A prophet is a male. A prophetess is a woman. And you can read all about the prophetess Anna and what she did and knew all about Jesus' coming. So when he appeared at the temple, she knew and she was excited because wasn't that she foretold the future? She just knew the truth. And that's what it is. A prophet and a prophetess are simply individuals who understand God's word, understand it clearly, and have a personal relationship with the Creator so that they understand truth. They understand freedom. They understand what causes psychological death and spiritual death, and that is simply bumping around in the dark. And it's never popular being a prophet or a prophetess. Many times as the people of God, ancient Israel, the Hebrews, not modern-day Israel, I got to say that clearly, the covenant people of God, when they kind of lost their way and the kings and queens that they had, like Ahab and others, became so tied to their idols that they began believing false science falsely so called, as Timothy wrote. They started believing crazy things like the earth is spinning and it's going around in a circle rapidly and the sun doesn't move at all. It's stayed in the sky and it's heliocentric. And this is what happens throughout history. And when you see this going on, what happens is simply prophets have to come and try and set the people straight. So you're forgetting what God told us. You're forgetting what God told Moses, our father. You're forgetting what God told Abraham. And so often in the case of corruption, prophets are hated and stoned and put to death because you see a prophet has no honor in their own country. We're just so proud and pleased. Thank you for a great team that we have. We have such a great supporting cast here, folks. It's absolutely nothing I do. We've got a great team around us. The end of the year is usually a time to reflect and sing a little Auld Lang Syne, should old acquaintances be forgotten, never brought to mind. We need to just kind of go back and think about the year past, what happened that was notable in the year, and just reflect and try and do better by remembering what we did right and kind of remembering those who have passed on. And top on the list, of course, is my co-host, Alex Studer, great man, such a powerful force for good, and such an untimely passing. I gotta say, folks, there was some skullduggery going on to make this man lose his way, to lose his desire, to just be beat down, to see nothing happening as far as financials, and be so lost that he literally came to the end of his rope. And see, we remember that. But we honor his work, honor his memory, and that's what we go forward to, and just say, okay, we do better, we understand, we move forward, and that's what I kind of want to do tonight with our team. Probably one knows him better than I did, a childhood friend growing up, Kevin, a.k.a. Major Burdock, took the news very hard, as I did. It was so shocking. And yet we carry on as best we can in the land of the living. We have Philip Fairbanks with us. We have Jim H.N. With us again tonight. All of these folks deserve a huge thank you for the end of the year. Our producer, who's always there, always positive, always there for us, Dominique. Man, we don't say his name. He doesn't come on the air very much, if often. But Dominic has done a great job over the years, not just this year, but for many, many years, and that's never forgotten. We have Mr. Rowe, of course, always there as much as he can be when he's not out doing other things, which he happens to do once in a while, and that's totally fine. Because you know what? He's a great journalist himself, a great researcher. And when Mr. Rowe has something to say, I found you better listen to it because it's pretty much right on point. So with that preface, let me just announce who our guest for next week is, thanks to Dominic. I was quite shocked when he told me I got this guest booked, because he told me who it was. And I says, oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'd love to interview you. Judge Anna Von Reitz from Big Lake, Alaska. Judge Anna Von Reitz has been incredible. I've listened to a lot of stuff, and a lot of people send me her articles and her writings. My golly, she is right on point, absolutely right on point. And not only in America, but she's a voice of reason, a voice of rational thinking. I dare say worldwide. She truly is. She has a great presence on the internet and it's all about understanding. I would dare say I think she is a prophetess. She's biblically sound. She's biblically oriented, and she knows exactly what the score is. She's warning people about why we have lost our freedoms, why we have lost what is called personal sovereignty, what it's all about. And really importantly, folks, is she has a prescription plan on how to organize and take it back. And again, here you got to remember, the folks, it seems like a huge David versus Goliath. We're like little Davids running around without any stones or even a sling. Okay, we're kind of running around with an ephod, a little, like a diaper covering, and we're kind of naked. But you know what? Hey, the Davids are much, much more numerous and much more powerful if they just unite than that silly little Goliath who thinks he's pretty tough. You see, it may seem an invincible task, but when you really understand that the vast majority are silent and just dumbed down, well, the chore then becomes a voice of reason to look for 2020 to be a year of perfect vision. I couldn't think of any better guest to kick off the 2020 Perfect Vision year of broadcasting than Judge Anna Von Reitz. So thank you, Dominique. My golly, I'm just excited. I will have a visit with her on the phone, of course, before the interview next week, and we'll lay out some hot topics. My sneaking suspicion is that we'll have her a lot more than just one time, because this is such a multifaceted topic. First of all, to spend a little of time of history of where exactly we've lost our sovereignty, why you really can't go into courts today and expect to receive fair treatment under the Constitution, because you see, we don't have a Constitution in the courts anymore. We'll explain why and how that happens, and then how to put the judges who I believe, like Judge Von Reitz herself, just had to have an awakening. They're not bad people, and I don't think Judge Anna is ever bad, and her attorney background history. Of course, she just had to be awakened. And so we need to hold the sitting judges, male and female, accountable for us. That's the preamble to tonight's show. I know we've got a lot of things we want to talk about. There's news that are breaking, of course, but I just want to start the show off by just giving a big shout-out salute, to our deceased friend and colleague, Alex. We miss him terribly. Miss his voice, miss his commentary, miss having phone calls with him. I'm sure I concur with that, Kevin Major. So anything you want to just add to that, feel free, jump on in.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex he introduced me to you, and I remember one of the first times that you passed over the reins, you had something going on, and he needed to host and asked me to come on. I had no idea what was going on, and it was insane. It was just straight 2 hours and just so much information. He was always explaining something that in his mind worked, and the explanation worked, even though you might not agree 100%. He could make the best argument, and you really had to stop. You really, really had to stop. And yeah, I miss him dearly. Great man, great commentator, great co-host, great host when you were gone. And yeah, we've been thinking about him quite a bit. And also, just thank you, True, as well, for having us on, and just a tremendous amount of respect for what you do and your opinions, and what you're doing in whole. What you're doing is so incredibly important. So it's an honor to be part of it. Thank you, True.
Well, you're most certainly welcome. Let me tell you what happened this last couple of weeks, and it's been kind of eye-opening in some ways. I started the story behind the story after moving up here to northern Utah from southern Utah, and I had the opportunity to host a radio show on Republic Radio for a full 2 hours per day, Monday through Friday, from like 10 in the morning till noon. And I said, well, that's a lot of time and effort, but you know what? I can give 2 hours a day. I can give 10 hours a week, and maybe a couple hours a day, devoting to get the word out as I know it, to share my experiences. And so I took the task on, and I got to tell you, that's where I think Alex was following me a little bit before that, but Alex began to listen in every day, because we had ratings that came out after my first full year Republic Broadcasting, RBN. Our time slot from 10 till noon was like one of the top in the entire nation for listening in. We had ratings that were comparable, if not slightly edging our main competitor in that time slot, one Rush Limbaugh. That was pretty impressive to me, seeing as how we don't really have an affiliation with regular radio, right? That we don't have the syndication rights that Clear Channel had. I thought that was pretty doggone interesting that people were tuning out Rush and tuning in to Republic Broadcasting during that time slot. And the jealousy, Alex commented on this quite a bit, because I did have Alex on as a guest, and this and that, when he was living mostly out of his motorhome, I believe. And we were riding a wave of popularity that I think, I can't prove this, but I think the powers that be that started Republic were getting jealous. Because the founder had his own show, and we were like 3 to 4 times more popular in listening audience than he was. And I don't know for sure, but he said the sponsors got upset because I was devoting too much of my time to interviewing things like like the true state of Israel, the USS Liberty survivors, that type of thing was upsetting too many of his sponsors. And so he graciously told me, he says, we're not going to have you on that time slot daily. But I understand you've got a marketable product, a good product, so I'm gonna introduce you to Joe McNeil and the MicroEffect. So to his credit, Mr. Stadtmiller did not cut the show off, but transferred me, over to Republic Radio, or from Republic to broadcasting to MicroEffect. And from there, we just began to do a daily show. I think we were there at MicroEffect for 3 to 4 years, and that's when Alex came to join me when I began as my co-host, and he did an admirable job. But Joe McNeil had a problem with Alex sometimes because Alex had a tendency to get kind of irate, and use some language that wasn't quite appropriate at times. And I kind of keep going back to Mr. McNeil saying, he's a kind of a rookie. He hasn't done a lot of broadcasting, so please cut him some slack. You gotta remember that the show content is what counts, and we'll try and so he says, well, I'll give you 3 strikes. Any more F-bombs when he's on the show, and your show is canceled. So Alex was gracious and saying, I'm so sorry, I get so emotional. I promise I'll do better. And he did for quite a while. That he would slip a little bit, or a guest would slip, etc. We were constantly fighting that battle. But we actually, let me just tell you, I think we were at MicroEffect for like 4 or 5 years, and this was a daily thing. And it took a lot of time and effort between the time with MicroEffect and Republic Broadcasting. We were like 8 or 9 years of broadcasting from 2003 to like 2013, 10 years, about 10 years of daily. And it was starting to weigh on me. I was getting burnt out because, of course, it's a lot of time without any compensation. We never got paid a nickel for it. What was frustrating is I had, what's his name? The geneticist who wrote the book, this doctor on the genetic evidence of who today's Israelites, they say the Israelites are. He wrote an actual paper about it, commissioned over a 5-year study. Hopkins, a trained geneticist. He's also a Jewish gentleman. We had him scheduled for the radio show, and we got set to broadcast that day, and we couldn't get on the radio. We couldn't get, the connections were broke off, and I'm thinking, is this by accident? Well, it wasn't a glitch in the MicroEffect. It was just simply they canceled the show. They just wouldn't broadcast it, and we canceled our show. I was so frustrated with that because that's the worst kind of censorship of all. When the ultimate truth of what I deem it to be one of the biggest lies ever perpetrated, that today's Israel or God's chosen people, when they're really not. They're Khazarian descendants of Genghis Khan. Okay, wow, and the truth won't come out because, again, money. Sponsorship. This one truth is so powerful to understand, and it was. I told Alex and I were. Alex was more upset than I was. He was ready to make a trip, to northern Idaho and have it out with Joe face to face. He was that upset, and who knows what would have happened there. Alex was very much hot-headed about it. I said, "Well, Alex, we can't change it. It's his radio station. He has a right to do programming as he sees fit, and so I'm just ready to take a break, maybe do a little free radio with blog talk and do here and there." And Alex was very gracious and courteous to do that, and then we landed here at freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio. We've been here for I don't know how many years. Dominic can tell us, but. So we have quite a track record of success, of daily broadcasts, and it all began, as I said on my blog, atruot.com. I explained the story behind the story, where the name came from. My dear friend Warren Anderson, and I hatched the idea of the radio show because Warren, as the editor of the daily newspaper down in Cedar City, southern Utah, was very frustrated at censorship of his stories on articles that he deemed were that people wanted to know or needed to know about. And so he resigned his position as editor of the local daily newspaper and went into real estate sales and did some rare documents dealing on the side of that. But what I said is, I think a radio show would be great because I was already doing daily radio or weekly radio show called Your Health is Your Wealth, focusing on alternative health and naturopath and natural healing, and trying to debunking a lot of the crazies out there that were doing things like trepanning skulls, drilling holes in skulls, and this type of thing as alternative therapies, et cetera, et cetera. I try to be a moderate voice in that, and so the story behind the story was born with a once a week broadcasting. A lot of what I went through in awakening from the Mormonism lie was a lot of it due to the work that Warren was doing with his research, showing me things like proving the satanic ritual abuse is deeply embedded in Mormonism. We had eyewitnesses, signed affidavits, even video evidence and complete evidence of children body parts. And we had the whole Megillah. And I like what Judge Anna, she has on her blog, AnnaVonRights.com, she has this little piece that caught my eye immediately. It's in red, a stern warning. She said, a stern warning about satanic ritual abuse. Now, I get what she's saying about that. She's saying these are heinous crimes, and what about, is it Islam? Is it Catholic? Is it Mormon? Is it what have you? Well, show me the proof. She's saying that, and there is not any proof that's out there for a number of reasons. You've got a lot of evidence, but nobody's been arrested and nobody's been convicted on this. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, with all due respect, Judge, but evidence-driven, get a signed affidavit. Well, I'm here to tell you, Judge Anna, we had all that. Oh, my goodness. I say we, myself, a private investigator named Sam Brower, and Warren Anderson, we had met, and we had all of that. We had clearly enough for indictments. We had clearly enough for a police investigation. But we brought it to the police and the powers that be, and all we got in return was, oh, my goodness, you can't go after these people. These are the highest, most powerful people in Utah. Oh, yeah. Judge Anna, it's for real. And people aren't coming forward because, you see, people disappear over this stuff. Believe me. We had one of our key witnesses who swore at the affidavit murdered over this. Found naked and stripped and cut to pieces behind Teocon Theater in St. George. Unsolved murder, they said. Okay. How far do we want to push this? We gave all this evidence to Ted Gunderson, retired FBI director, with the sworn affidavits, thinking that maybe the white hats in the FBI could do something, because we're talking about trafficking across state lines in a lot of cases. These children are typically not kidnapped and used here locally. They're brought in from third world countries. And we gave all the document, and Ted Gunderson, he said, wow, this is incredible, because it dovetails with my research called the CIA's group called the Finders. He'd already put a file together on the Finders. We compared notes. And as powerful as Ted Gunderson is, and as powerful as his contacts were in the FBI, I repeat, not one indictment was ever issued. An indictment is not a guilty. It's just say there's enough evidence, enough smoke that there's probably fire going on. There needs to be a trial. There needs to be an arrest made, Miranda rights read, and a trial proceeding, but not one indictment. Did it mean that we had no evidence? No, Judge Anna. Oh, no. We had plenty of evidence. But you see, this is the underbelly. This is the Achilles heel of this beast. Because you see, when this is fully exposed, it is horrendous. I would refer Judge Anna to the presiding bishopric of the Mormon Church in 1989. The presiding bishop at the time delivered a memo, and it was an internal memo to the LDS Church hierarchy, the Strengthening the Members Committee by Senior Apostle Boyd K. Packer, who was in charge of it. And this memo from the presiding bishop's office had zero action taken on it for 2 years when presiding Bishop Glenn Pace of the Mormon Church released it to the media. And my friend Warren in 1991 was editor of the newspaper and received a press copy from Judge Pace. And of course, this was not to be printed in the newspapers. And so Warren shared it all with me, and that's one of the things that really shook me up in Mormonism. It details how this is from the highest authority in the Mormon Church, the reality of organized satanic ritual abuse inside of Mormonism. And again, it's not just a Mormon LDS issue. It's a Roman Catholic issue. It's a Methodist issue. It's happening across the board in so-called Christian denominations.
The Southern Baptist Convention had a big scandal recently. The Legionaries of Christ apparently was rife with it. That story just recently broke. Yeah, it's kind of endemic. The issue is when you have, and it doesn't matter what religion, whether it's Christian or not, when you have a religion, there's intense opportunity for abuse of power, because when you got somebody saying, we hold the keys to the kingdom, and if you don't listen to me, God will hate you, or you'll be cursed, or you'll go to hell, or whatever. Insert religious religious warning here. But yeah, it's not one denomination or even one religion. I mean, heck, it's part of certain Muslim countries have the whole, like the bachi-bazi thing where they abuse the little boys in Afghanistan, which basically comes from the Babylonian Talmud, which was also adopted by the Jews. So yeah, it's not like there's one religion that does this. No, not at all.
I really like. Thanks, Philip, for that great insight. Yeah. What Judge Anna wrote, she's not saying that SRA doesn't happen. She just says there's just no strong evidence to back it. There's no arrests, come on, look at the closest thing to it is Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, come on, when you really dig into what Lolita Island is all about, it's not only a place for sexual conquest, but make no mistake, it supplies children for these rituals, and that's, I think, why they had to remove him from any more investigation, frankly. And so, yeah, we see this, and she's absolutely right when Judge Anna says it's not Islam satanic ritual abuse or Islam Satanism, it's not Mormon Satanism. He says you're not. That's what gets me about these so-called Jews for Jesus. These Christian rabbis like Rabbi Khan, I say Conkahn, but they say they're Christian, but yet still hold fast to their Jewish traditions, which the whole thing claims there is no Messiah that has come. You can't be both wet and dry at the same time. So she's right. She says if people are doing this satanic ritual abuse, whether you're under a Catholic banner or a Catholic robe or a Mormon priesthood, they aren't Christian at all. They're simply Satanists. End of story.
Hey, you got to remember that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. In a lot of cases, of course, okay, the bigger and more powerful the agents or actors involved, and the darker and dirtier what they're involved in, like you mentioned Epstein, for instance, of course there's going to be no evidence. If you don't mind, this segues into something that's been on my mind for a few days, the Kevin Spacey thing. We've got three. The third accuser died just on Christmas Day, which is weird because it's like hours, not a day later, hours after Kevin Spacey releases this incredibly creepy video where he talks about it. If somebody's trying to hurt you, do the unexpected and kill them with kindness. And he's doing the Frank Underwood voice from the show House of Cards, which Frank Underwood is this Clinton-esque character who kills all the people who go up against him. So it's like it's really like it really feels like he was just kind of gloating there, as I think it was Dom or Mr. Rose said in the chat earlier. But yeah, just because we don't have evidence of all the people that were involved in Epstein, by the way, Clinton, Epstein, and Spacey, they all hung out. Weinstein, those guys hung out. All of them. And Kevin Spacey, at the Nobel Peace Prize Award, he groped a prince, royalty. Like, how untouchable must you feel if in front of some of the world's most powerful and influential people, you decide, it'd be a great idea right now if I just reach under the table and grope royalty. He can't do anything. I'm Kevin Spacey, and I'm connected to X, Y, and Z.
Let me tell you about when I was working with Ted Gunderson. We had a couple of private investigators that were we paid them what we could as we could help them, and they were very invaluable in researching this. We had one lady came forward who was best described as a mother goddess. She's of Jewish persuasion. Her last name is Jacobs. Her name is, I don't mind telling you her name, Sharon Jacobs. Sharon came in after, she heard us on the radio a few times, and she said, I can prove all this. I feel really torn. I feel my part of me is as I can't help feeling sorry for these victims, but I don't think anybody can stop it because of who I know is there at these rituals. And there's covens of 13 priestesses, and they have hierarchy in the highest level. Sharon was on the top coven. Okay, now she came forward with a great story, but Ted Gunderson interviewed her. Had a couple of agents, current agents that interviewed her because she had all this evidence during the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping case. Believe that's a whole other story. For another story behind the story, we did a series of interviews with her concerning why Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped and the whole 9 yards with that. And it's a bizarre story. But so here's the FBI agents in charge in Salt Lake City that took her story down, took her evidence, and confirmed everything, to the point where they came and issued a subpoena from the judge to confiscate the Smart family computer. Now, Ed Smart, Elizabeth Smart's father, was incensed over this. That how dare they come make them a victim of this kidnapping? And he played the media like a fiddle, and he actually brought a private lawsuit against the FBI and the agents that confiscated the computer. You know why? It was full of snuff films, pornography like you wouldn't believe. And the FBI said in a report after Ed Smart came out and was spouting off, they said, well, we have amazing evidence on here that we need to follow up on. But the federal judge basically ordered the computer to be given back and to be silenced, a gag order on Mr. Smart. And anybody talking about this like we're doing right now was threatened with as a multi-million-dollar libel suits. Well, without evidence, you better shut your mouth. I just know, and if I were to be sued right now for what I'm saying, sad deal. I don't got anything to take anyway, Mr. Smart. But hey, you know what's the truth. I know what's the truth. Do I have evidence to it? No. Can't prove it, but you know what's right and what's wrong with this. Ed Smart just recently came out and said he's a flaming homosexual, always has been, and his wife has left him. All this, and now he's out speaking for the LGBT movement as, oh man, you need to be who you are, and it's all good, and Mormonism is wrong because they keep the closet homosexuals like me Muslim. He's now becoming this big voice for gay is okay, and if you think it's wrong, you're the one that has the problem. Oh my goodness, this saga just keeps on going. But see, Sharon Jacobs knew the situation, knew the connection with this family, with the Satanic Covenant that were doing these rituals in Salt Lake. Okay. Now, here's the key thing. When she actually had brought in a hidden camera to a ritual that she said was happening underground in Salt Lake City. Under Salt Lake City, there's all kinds of tunnels connecting the Union Pacific terminal. If you look at, if you see a Utah Jazz game at the Vivint Smart Home Arena, just a little bit to the north of the Smart Home Arena is this huge grand Masonic shield for the Union Pacific Railroad Company. Well, according to Sharon, underneath that there were tunnels that were built. They were actually found. They've been there many centuries before they were ancient tunnels. They were looking at putting a subway system there at one time in the early stages of Salt Lake City's development. But these tunnels, according to Miss Jacobs, interconnects all of these areas where this satanic ritual abuse happens, not the least of which is directly underneath the Mormon temple. Now, okay, on its outset, this sounds like a wild bunch of gossip, and it's frankly sounds crazy at the outset. But no, she brings back hard evidence, photographs, even a dead baby that she was able to switch out of the garbage bag and bring in and show the ritual. All of this to me was, my goodness, it's hard evidence. How can you throw away a baby? Well, nobody found him missing. Well, it's a third world, looked like an Oriental baby. Probably came from Cambodia or someplace. Okay? All of this, Ted Gunderson and the FBI was like, oh crap, this is real. And she says, I will, and she did sign affidavits. She swore out that she would be the key witness. And all this went to a federal judge, and it was sealed up, and nobody got indicted. But you know what happened to Miss Jacobs? She disappeared. Her friends, we thought we were her friends. We wanted to meet with her one day. She never showed up to the meeting. She lived alone. She lived by herself. Oh my goodness. She just flat out disappeared. Ted Gunderson, the FBI, issued a missing persons. Oh, well, join the club. It's one of hundreds of missing persons. We don't know where she is. They could care less about this lady, Sharon Jacobs. We had a videographer named Lynn who posted, went to try and get public awareness of Sharon being missing. Didn't matter. She was gone. Well, about a year later, a friend of Sharon's came and says, well, I just saw Sharon. She's back in town. So we went to meet her. Same face, same body, but it was like her memory had been wiped out. She didn't know us from the kidnap, and never saw us before. Didn't know who we were. When her friend, found she was kidnapped. She was put down in Orange County. She was forcibly put into a psychiatric ward, and they were there for a year. We did trace it. and she were given some psychotropic drugs of some kind, and they flat out, she was like lobotomized, chemically lobotomized. She had no idea, anything. She had total amnesia of anything past a certain date. Now, that's a true story, folks. And it just like, wow, this is what happens to people that come out and sign affidavits against the Kevin Spaceys of the world, okay? Because, she talked about the Hollywood connection, about all these celebrities, that Hillary and Bill, she was there in one ritual. These, according to her, these happen every 8 times a year during the 8 wills of the Wicca, will of the year. Yule, the 21st of December, the winter solstice, is one of their high black Sabbaths. October 31st, Samhain, aka Halloween, is another, etc., etc. September 21st, all of the solstices. She explained there is, in her estimation, probably 10,000 children sacrificed each of the 8. So do the math: 80,000 a year kids, innocent ones, human sacrifice. And she went on and on with, I've got on my shelf here that's collecting nothing but dust, over 30 hours of video testimony from this woman. Okay? But who's going to believe it? If we thought about publishing this, in fact, David Icke, actually, whenever we got no indictments, we introduced her to David Icke. Actually flew to Salt Lake and interviewed her, video interviewed her, because this video that David Icke did, Confessions of a Mother Goddess, where they saw this reptilian shape-shifting stuff. Okay, what Sharon had to offer was 10 times more convincing, with hard evidence, that we thought David Icke would jump all over this, but he didn't do a dang thing about it either. So it led me to say, well, David Icke is a disinformation agent, not wanting to he just wants to get publicity over it, in my opinion. Nothing really, and of course he'll tell you, well, she disappeared on us, we couldn't put anything out with her. Well, maybe she disappeared because he made some phone calls. How do we know? Who grabbed her and why? It wasn't just that they wanted to kill her, they just wanted, in case we ever published all of our affidavit videos, she'd come on and say, I don't know anything about these people. I don't know. This wasn't me. This is staged. That's how they operate. I'm just saying, guys. So
David Icke, how can you trust a guy who built his entire career on blasting stuff like Thelema and Theosophy, while at the same time writing books that are basically warmed over, rehashed Thelema and Theosophy? It's the same stuff. He's like, now, this is what these guys believe, and they're evil. And then he goes, and this is what's real. And it's like, I've studied, read up on Blavatsky and Crowley. And the stuff he's saying is straight out of that. He changes a few things around here and there, which is basically what Crowley did. He took Helena Blavatsky's Theosophy and a few other things and mixed them all together and changed them. L. Ron Hubbard did the same thing. But he basically advocates for the same kind of thing that he's saying is what's wrong with the world. So that alone, even if he wasn't, I don't know who I trust less, David Icke or Alex Jones, but they're both very obvious disinfo shells.
Well said, and we don't know. We're just, I say we are the people, our videographer Lynn and others. What we want to get some opinion, and Ted Gunderson was like shook. He was shook up that nobody. I mean, he said this evidence is impeccable. The investigating agents that were still full-time agents were shocked that there was no arrest warrants given by the personal affidavit testimony. I mean, how much do you have to have? a hidden camera with this? And this dovetails, and again, this was ongoing to some degree when I debriefed Alex Studer there in San Francisco about it, and Alex, being the bold individual, kind of fearless sometimes, he went right up to the gates of Bohemian Grove there, and the Presidio and Mr. Aquino and others, and got right in their faces. I mean, come on, this took a lot of guts, frankly. Maybe not the wisest choice, but he did that, and I say this because of what was going on, the connection with the Presidio testimony and things given by Sharon. About this time now, I'd moved from Cedar City up to Salt Lake. I received a phone call one night. It was probably 2003, as I recall. The gentleman on the other line, he said his last name was Corey. He says, I'm calling. I understand you've done a lot of radio interviews with about shape-shifting, about this and that. I says, no. Well, I've done radio shows with individuals, and I told her about Sharon Jacobs saying that when the blood is given in the ritual, she herself has eyewitnessed individuals shapeshift into a different form. Now I said, I have not ever witnessed that. Sharon said she had, and others have said that, and that's where the credibility gap comes in. I mean, come on, really? Really? It's bad enough you think there's satanic ritual, but shape-shifting going on? But Sharon says, no, not everybody does, but enough at the highest orders do this. She said there is something. This is why I'm willing to talk about it, because I think it's very, very wrong against humanity. Well, Mr. Corey, name is Brandon Corey. He said, well, could I come and meet with you and talk to you more about it? I'm from Southern California. I said, no, I've kind of got run out of town I'm trying to make a new start up here in northern Utah, because, I got so much ridicule, so much hate, so much death threats that I think I just better let this lie. What's your interest in this anyway? He says, you have your computer on? I said, yes, I do. He says, go to this website. His friend named Jude Kemper, he said, had claimed that Vice President Dick Cheney was a shape-shifting reptilian. I said, he says, what do you think about that claim? I said, oddly enough, this gal Sharon claimed she saw Dick Cheney in a ritual in Wyoming shapeshift. She's one that she specifically named. Now, maybe Sharon and this Jude were making up stories. I don't know. But that's interesting he would say that. I don't know if he knew Sharon and vice versa. And that got Brandon Corey suddenly got animated on the phone. He says, you're kidding. Can I talk to this Sharon Jacobs? I said, she's disappeared. She's like your friend Jude. She's gone off the radar screen. We don't know where she's at. Oh, my God. And then so Brandon got off. And then so here's his website. Find Jude Kemper now, and tell the whole story of how Jude Kemper had infiltrated, got some bogus Secret Service credentials when Vice President Cheney was there in doing a speech. He had gotten in back room and wanted to get in and do like this one guy had done. It's got it backstage into the Buckingham Palace and actually confronted the Queen Mother, right? He was going to do the same thing and get a shapeshift on video. That was his plan, and he flat out disappears, according to Brandon Corey. Wow. So I'm sitting here, okay, listen, a guy that's done a lot of research on this is a British guy named David Icke, and I gave him. I actually had David Icke's phone number and connection. I says, because I've I had David Icke interview Sharon Jacobs, and he's supposed to do a documentary film on Sharon's story, and she disappeared, never materialized. Okay, so Brandon Corey takes the information. Well, folks, if you go and Google it, I think it's still probably on the internet, but it's been labeled a hoax, a flat-out false story. It's called the Brandon Corey story. You can call that up and watch the video. You decide for yourself. The friend of Brandon Corey was a videographer. I know the guy's name. I promised him I would never talk about him with his real name. This guy is scared to death that he'll be killed, or he's got concerns. But see, he was the sidekick of Brandon to do with the videotaping. Brandon followed the lead, flew to England and interviewed David Icke there, and frankly said, just because there's all these imagery and that around the city of London doesn't mean that we're surrounded by reptilian shapeshifters. I don't buy it. And the evidence was pretty flimsy, and David Icke tried his best to convince him that he was right and he wasn't crazy, yada, yada, yada. Well, after he got back from England, Corey calls me up and said, I think David Icke is a nutcase. I don't think he's right at all. I says, okay, you could be right. I didn't interview him like you did. I wish Sharon Jacobs was here. I think she's credible. Unfortunately, she's disappeared, and just like your friend Jude, she's probably not going to show up again. I don't know. Well, the Brandon Corey story, folks, is real because I also had a connection with a Marine and Alex. Alex had a backstage pass basically because of his musician credentials into Bohemian Grove, and when I bounced all this off of Alex was like, yeah, yeah, I know how to get back into Bohemian Grove, and they're doing rituals and SRA there, satanic ritual abuse. I know they are. Well, here is this Marine lieutenant, Marine Corps officer, who was on security detail there as part of the Presidio Marine Corps contingent at Bohemian Grove, stumbled upon a shapeshift. He's an African-American gentleman. I talked to him on the phone. I never met him personally, but he said, because Sharon was giving me this information to corroborate what she had witnessed. So I gave this Marine's name to Corey. Corey called him, and they went and met him at the Washington Monument there in Washington, D.C. He had been reassigned and was there, and he said on the record, I witnessed a shapeshift. Okay? I witnessed it, and he gave his testimony on videotape to Brandon Corey's and his videographer. It's all part of the Brandon Corey story. It's supposed to be this big fraud. No. Shortly after that video evidence was given, this Marine was ritually murdered. Him and his whole wife and kids were found chopped to pieces in their Washington, D.C. place. No, just accidental? See, there's no more evidence. See, you talk about affidavits, Miss Von Rice. I mean, they know how to oh my goodness. And if you look at this Marine's name as far as his medical or his history, he wasn't even allowed to be buried in his uniform. He was basically drummed out of the Marine Corps. Why? Because he told a secret? Oh yeah, I'm here to tell you folks, this is real as can be. And oh my goodness, you see, what do? Brandon Corey began to piece it together. He called me and he watched the video of Jude Kemper that he had sent to his videographer friend. He had a hidden camera on him when he went in to try and capture Dick Cheney. And the Secret Service agents that roughed him up before his video went dark, one of them indeed his eyes turned into vertical slits. It's as clear as can be. So that convinced Brandon there was something to this. We'll come back at the top of the hour, folks. But Brandon Corey goes in and gets into Bohemian Grove, and Alex knew very well the story was accurate. Believe. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away. This is a story behind the story. I'm your host, Dr. H. Ruot. Truth is hard to take sometimes. We'll be right back. Oh, yes, ladies, music is the doctor. Yeah, music therapy is good stuff. It really is, when you can listen to 432 hertz classical music and just meditate and go back to the source, which is, again, what King David did as a young shepherd boy, and connect to creation. That's the ultimate power. So, yeah, next week, we have a great guest lined up. Thank you, Dominic, for that. Anna von Reitz, Judge Anna. I mean to tell you, this is going to be a great show. I know it already. I don't really have to be a prophet to understand what she has to offer. A wealth of information. It'll be great to listen up, folks, to what she can teach us. And I have a gut feeling she'll want. We'll have to just do more than just 1 2-hour show to really get do her work justice, and again spread the truth that she has to have. So, Judge Anna von Reitz next week. Again, just sort of also mention we do simulcast with a story behind the story with the Goldwater Network, and that in the Philippines. We have with us Philip Fairbanks and Major Burdock in Manila, Philippines. Good, bright morning there, Saturday morning there across the international timeline. Thank you guys for being with us as always. Is James Watkins with us still? I believe so. I haven't heard from him, but he's local. He's, I should say, in the Bay Area. He's has a great insight to a lot of things we talk about, especially I think next week. So, guys, I kind of I don't know how I got on this topic, but man, it's frustrating when I know the situation is real, but it's I mean, come on, Marine Corps lieutenant, this is not fiction. And how in the world people they click on this Brandon Corey story, at least in the years past, as a video that was made by this television show for it, and it was going to air. I understand it didn't really air, but the video was released, the video documentary on the Brandon Corey story. And David Icke came out and said, this is all this elaborate hoax. It's all fiction. It's not true. And, man, everybody, even some of my closest friends and even my family, my son, said, Dad, this is all a fiction. Even David Icke says, so you have no credibility. Okay, in the story, the video story, Brandon and his videographer crossed the police tape line and get into Jude Kemper's apartment, and they're looking for clues as to what happened to Mr. Kemper, and they come across David Icke's book, The Children of the Matrix. And you hear Brandon Corey say to his videographer, says, hey, this is the guy that Mormon in Utah was talking about. I mean, that was me. Oh, yeah, that's all fiction. He didn't, really didn't tell him about anything. How in the heck did Brandon Corey even get the information to go interview David Icke? And then have David Icke come out and say it's all fiction? Philip, you're right on point. This guy is a shill. He's a gatekeeper. It's pretty much obvious. I was so shocked at that. I erased all memory of David Icke from anything in my books and I don't correspond with him, man. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. But
one of the easiest ways to tell if somebody's a disinfo shill, like number one, guys like Alex Jones and David Icke, Disinfo 101, you got to throw out some pieces of whole truth, then some pieces of half truth, and then some absolute bull. The whole purpose of that being when people automatically discount anything that sounds like any of that so that the truth gets buried. Here's another way to look, like guys like David McGowan or David Livingston, two of my favorite parapolitical researchers, Ed Opperman. Folks like these, they're not famous. They're not millionaires. They're not making the scene. They're not doing Netflix and Hulu documentaries. They've not got like big movie deals or TV shows. Anybody who's telling that much of the truth is going to be kind of suppressed, marginalized, and pushed in the corner somewhat. Well,
I want to just again, if you have time, I suggest you watch that Brandon Corey story with my testimony. I mean, this is not third person. This is my story. It's his story. It did happen. Absolutely, we'll take any type of lie detector test needed to verify the phone conversations, the information I sent to Brandon, again concerning his friend Jude Kemper and the missing person that he was looking for. Here's what's amazing to me: that after Brandon Corey followed the lead of this Marine and got access into as a waiter, part of the wait corps, going into Bohemian Grove, he got it there and followed the instructions of what this Marine had seen. And Brandon Corey goes into this room, and here's it's right straight out of Eyes Wide Shut. Here's these people in robes, and there's a young woman on the table, and she's being, the guts are being eaten by this group of miscreants. And then the camera goes dead, and Brandon Corey goes missing like Jude Kemper did. But see, Brandon Corey was transmitting, just like Jude Kemper was transmitting, through a wireless transmitter to his videographer. Now, his videographer knows me. He didn't trust me. He didn't trust Jude Kemper. But Brandon was paying him a goodly sum. Brandon was pretty independently wealthy and was paying him. He was paid to do the job. But when Brandon stumbles on this and Brandon goes missing, his videographer starts to go crazy and panic as he calls me and says, oh my God, Brandon's gone missing like Jude is missing. I said, what the hell? Really? Yeah. So he overnighted to me a CD-ROM, a video-ROM of his transmission. Help me. And then a few days or weeks later, this videographer calls me, and he's sick because his apartment was firebombed. It's all in the story. Yeah, this is all some elaborate hoax. Yeah, Mr. Icke, somebody just went in and firebombed, arsoned this guy's apartment, and he knew he could be killed. He says, I'm disappearing. I'm going underground. I'm changing my identity and everything else. Oh, that's a big hoax there, Mr. Icke. Yeah. He went to this true TV to tell a story, hoping that he could get some protection, but he kept his identity hidden. Okay. That's who made the video. Okay, what you see there is exactly what I was sent. Now, I took this video I made a special appointment to Ted Gunderson. I brought it to his attention. He brought a special agent in charge, and they were able to take that it was as grainy as it was. They were able to do some analysis on it and absolutely take the victim on the table and run it through their missing person FBI database, and had a positive match to a young woman abducted in Oregon. They matched. They knew who it was. Okay, David Icke, tell the family in Oregon that, the FBI came and said, we think, this is the woman, and here's what she was involved in. And that was some terrible news to this grieving family. They never got the body back, but it was a blue-eyed, blonde, young 21-year-old co-ed that went up missing from Oregon. And she goes, because Oregon's just right up the road from Bohemian Grove. Indictments? No. Brandon Corey's missing. The videographer, his friend, his employer, is scared witless, with a capital SH, not wit. He's absolutely petrified for his life. And I'm trying to get Alex to be involved, and Alex was more than willing, to because he's in the neck of the woods, to kind of shelter the videographer. And because when Alex saw the video, he says, "This is real. I know. I had access to it, the Musicians Guild. I did a gig at Bohemian Grove. I've been there. This is actual footage. This is not some staged thing." Alex knew it. See, we're reminiscing here about some of the Alex's work in the past, and Major, I don't think that Alex knew how real this was until the Brandon Corey thing hit him square upside the head. Because I tell you, it sobered up Alex. Alex was thinking, I've been to Bohemian Grove. I did a music gig there. It's a little creepy and crazy, but I don't think all this is going on, you see.
Well, and also apparently he had a friend who had some sort of contact whatsoever, one of these Rothschilds connected people, and he was. But yeah, if you talk to him about a lot of these how far this goes, and I remember just thinking, wow, this guy is just out there, which is fine, but he would go off for hours. I mean, you wouldn't get a word in sideways. I mean, there was just no way. And there were certain people that you just couldn't introduce him to. There were just Alex was one of these people where he always had an invitation, except for certain parties. That you knew that there were going to be guests that would just not be able to handle it at all. And so they're just people who are really thin-skinned, and you could predict something bad was going to happen, so you just want to avoid those situations. But yeah, I remember him really, like, the one thing he had to say about him is he went in 100% when he decided to do something. And I mean, the research and the delving, I mean, he spent a lot of time researching, and a lot of time really just thinking about a lot of this stuff, and maybe sometimes too much time, because it really did delve into his life. I know there were people that commented on an article, his obituary, that they commented and said, well, they were obviously co-workers of his, and you can imagine, I mean, if you're working alongside him, he sometimes just couldn't help himself. So naturally, you've got all of these union guys, and so he kind of painted himself into a little corner at work on some occasions, and he would talk to me about that. But there was another group of guys that just took him for who he was and understood that, hey, this guy's really passionate about what he believes, and his research is certainly not lacking. So, I remember my reaction the first time that Alex just went off on a diatribe. It was crazy. But, nonetheless, you can imagine. It was pretty crazy.
Well, it's
and
good. I have to laugh because of all of the topics, because when Alex first started listening to me when I was on Republic, and then it became, he started like being a fan of what I was saying. At first he was skeptical, saying, well, show me this, show me that. And I would always give him some source documentation. But he said, wow, you're blowing my mind. I don't know how many times he said that. You're blowing my mind completely. And I said, well, I don't like to see who's blowing minds. I like to think expanding your mind. But see, when this whole Brandon Corey thing was unfolding, and then when I shared it with Alex with a long series of phone calls, and then the information given that his videographer had sent, and then I sent him I made about a dozen CD or DVD copies of that. And I sent one to Alex, and he called and says, that's Presidio, or that's Bohemian Grove. I've been there. I've had the gig there. It's exactly how you go in. You have to go through the screening. It's exactly the right. He says, this is absolutely, he got his full attention. I mean, capital full attention. Even when they went in, with the wait service, as a waiter, all of that, the musicians went into a different, the same entrance, but a different part where they didn't go to the kitchen type of thing. Alex verified all of that. He says, that's for real. It blows me away. And then, of course, seeing that he disappeared, well, Alex then became completely convinced. And when Alex was convinced about something, it stoked a fire in him. Before that, he thought I was kind of crazy. He did. He says, oh, you shouldn't be talking. This is crazy stuff. I've been to Bohemian Grove. Alex Jones is crazy. It's not anything like that. It's really, these guys party, but they party hardy, and that's okay. I've been there. I've been musician in there. I've been part of a crew. And I says, well, that's good information, Alex, but I don't trust Alex Jones with what he was doing, Bullhorn Jones. But you got to admit that cremation of care and that owl is pretty occultic. He goes, yeah, but it's, I don't think there's any really bad stuff going on there. But that one evidence in Brandon Corey disappearing, it shook Alex to his roots. It did. I said, can you help now? I mean, can you talk to the videographer, try to help him go underground, kind of keep him safe with your contacts? Oh, heck yes. He says, I'll be happy to help him. I'll with his music network, Alex knew a lot of people, and they were not lightweights, So when Brandon Corey's ex-wife gets involved and goes to the same private detective that's there in the video, right, that Brandon had tried to pay this detective to go and search out Jude Kemper. And the private investigator, he's a real guy. He's a licensed PI. He comes and says, I'm not going to do this because Brandon, I'm telling you, Jude Kemper is a non-person. He doesn't exist. Everything's been wiped out on his history. And Brandon says, what does this mean? And the private investigator says, it means I'm not taking this case. Because anybody that has the power to do that has the power to snuff me out right now, and I'm not going to be involved in it. So you're on your own. Well, because of that information, this videographer and Brandon's ex-wife goes back to him, and he puts a trace on Alex's, on Brandon's credit cards, and it's back in the Midwest. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's out of Chicago. His credit card was used, and they tracked him to an old seedy motel, and they go back, and there he is. Brandon Corey's in this motel with his little pinky and his index finger chopped off, which is how you make the devil's horn signal. It chops him off. He's got bloody, bleeding stumps, and he has no idea who he is. He's like Sharon Jacobs. He's been totally lobotomized chemically. They bring him back. he just can't even hardly function anymore. He's still Brandon Corey, but I don't know where he is today and what's going on. He's a vegetable. If he's even alive today. Oh, yeah, Mr. Ike, this is absolutely a hoax. Oh, yeah, this is just fiction, Mr. Ike. And, I'm just amazed how quick people are willing to buy into that, it's nothing here. It's just a wild conspiracy theory that this even exists. This Marine lieutenant, it's all just fictional. He doesn't exist. See, this Marine lieutenant, after it went down and he was killed, there was this newspaper article, because a friend that knew the story and knew him in Washington sent me the obituary, and I tracked it down. Today, you go back and search for anything to do with this individual, where he's buried, his obituary information that was there for 2 weeks after the newspaper article came out about the bizarre aspects of his murder. Whether they were speculating was it drug related, somehow related to something that was involved. Well, yeah, it definitely is. But see, there's all that history, just like Jude Kemper's history has been erased from the databanks. It's gone. It's wiped out. I'm telling you, it's frightening in one way, but in another way, it tells me, and this is one secret that they will kill, do whatever it takes to keep from being exposed. Yeah, this is what led Ted Gunderson here in my house here in Ogden to put his head in his hands and weep and crocodile tears and sobs, because he thinks his life is a failure. His diagnosis of cancer is not good news to him. He says I may not have too many years left, and all the work I've done is a failure. Nothing, because I have not one indictment, not one case to be prosecuted. And he wept and frustrated. So all I can do is tell you what I've witnessed. It's one area, like Judge Anna said, she's not dismissing the possibilities. That's wise of her to do that. She's right on point when she declares on her website, hey, we need hard evidence. Well, Judge Anna, I'd love to sit down with you and show you my video evidences and my documentation, but you see, it's all just a story. The people, the names have been changed to protect the guilty. Okay. To use the old axiom there, but I know what I know. I witnessed what I've witnessed. The water under the bridge is real. And so when I talk about it, you can't believe the hate mail I get from people saying, man, you're losing your credibility talking about Brandon Corey. You're losing your credibility when talking about shape-shifting reptilians. No, I'm not saying that they exist. I'm saying that ritual abuse has a lot of evidence. And there are people that have come forward, whether it's a Jude Kemper or a Sharon Jacobs, that said they've eyewitnessed it. They've seen it. Now, I'm not a mother goddess. I don't participate in these things. If they exist, why not? I mean, I've documented some pretty strange activity in Utah, the so-called Skinwalker Ranch. And yeah, I can tell you a story, but I don't want it to imperil some people right now. This last fall, there was a shape-shifting incident. Now, I didn't see it, but 2 eyewitnesses did and saw some very bizarre things happen. And even the tribal police verified it. Believe me, folks. Just because you don't understand it, and just because it's not part of your everyday existence, does not mean it is not real. Okay, the Native Americans, the Utes, the Paiutes, the Navajo, the Hopi, they know shape-shifting is real. they know about the dragon. They know, because there are people even in the tribes that practice the dark arts. The tribal police, the Ute tribal police, verified that this one fellow was a shaman, and it was right there in the police file, a shapeshifter. What does that mean? It means they're very dark, and they practice some very dark things on the 8 black Sabbaths of the year, the 8 high Sabbath dates. I mean, it's just saying, folks, it's real. And so, a couple of weeks ago, we went walked into the paranormal a little bit with what Mr. Rowe has experienced with his orbs in his home. And when I talk about these orbs and when they appear, what I didn't mention in that show was the documentation, video documentation of orbs at the Skinwalker Ranch, and eyewitness sworn affidavits of orbs appearing during satanic rituals by Miss Sharon Jacobs. In one of her interviews, she says, yeah, when shape-shifting starts to occur and some very dark forces manifest, there's these little orbs floating around that seem to appear when the child is sacrificed. And I got to say, Philip, when you talk about the spacey thing, Sharon said that one of the euphemisms, see, these children are tortured before they're killed. They are absolutely, they have to get the adrenaline pumping. This brain chemical that goes into their blood, and the little ones, the more traumatized, the more tortured they are, the richer the substance is in the blood, according to Sharon's expertise. And she said, when they're killed, the euphemism is, it's a kindness to them to finally kill them. We kill them with kindness. We put them out of their misery. When the Spacey thing came out and they said that, I knew exactly what he was talking about. It's code.
All right. Yeah. Speaking of the whole, like, the adrenochrome thing, I'll never forget, I was in my teens. I was in high school when I first heard the word adrenochrome, and it was from Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which you never know how much of that is, him being honest or just drug-induced hallucinations. But, at the time I was 17, I was into the beatniks and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I was in my late 20s, a decade later, before I realized, dude, William S. Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg and Hunter Thompson are all talking about, like, having sex with kids. What's up with that? It took me a decade to, like, the little girl named Alice, who was like 16 or something, and she was a Christian who painted pictures of Barbra Streisand, and then his lawyer got her doped up on, like, huge amounts of LSD, and then they took turns having sex with her. And then the lawyer, what did they call him? The Brown Buffalo was his nickname. Thompson's lawyer at the time, supposedly, once again, and I thought all this was just, half made up or completely made up at the time. Supposedly, like, he had a Satanist client who was involved in, like, ritual murders, and he paid him in adrenochrome, which they tried. And, I really honestly, I knew that, I looked it up. Oh, adrenochrome is a real thing. It's oxidized adrenaline. Okay. But I kind of assumed, like, that had to be fake. And then I started hearing about the possibilities of, Hunter Thompson being involved with the whole Franklin scandal, and, specifically him possibly making snuff porn for the elites, which, when you consider the fact he was traveling all over the world and constantly had a suitcase full of cocaine and a dozen other drugs and never went to jail. Kind of like Timothy Leary, right? He was at one point, like, the most wanted, like, in the FBI's 10 Most Wanted. And is it any coincidence that now the CIA's interrogation manual, like when they interview new officers, it's a Leary test. So I'm pretty sure that Tim played along quite well with the CIA. I'm pretty sure that the same thing with Thompson, who even his own son. I thought he was a really cool guy, and I still admire some of his and Burroughs' writing, but I definitely don't admire or look up to these guys anymore. And it's really hard to separate the art from the artist too. But yeah, absolutely. Just the fact that someone could be that blatant about what they're doing and still never get busted, like there's something fishy about that.
Well, indeed, it goes back to Hunter Biden. This is what I've said before. Why is he getting a free pass about really what's going on with that connection and why is the Ukraine, this company, paying him $50,000 plus a month for what? Why is this not really divulged, and why in fact did Joe Biden, VP Biden, indeed interfere and stop the investigation of Hunter Biden's company? That happened, and there was indeed talk about benefiting personally. That's a far cry from a sitting president asking for aid and bring to light what really happened with Joe Biden. That is the high crime and misdemeanor. But no, that's what gets me with this whole hypocrisy. Both Republican and Democrat, they're both dark, and the hypocrisy just reeks. I'm telling you,
it's imperialism and corruption is one of the few things that's absolutely bipartisan.
Yeah, indeed. And so, we have to just be, like the scripture says, be as wise as a serpent and and as harmless as a dove. And I try and do that, when this unfolded with Brandon Corey and David Icke did his thing, and because I got the videographer send me the hot copy of the Brandon Corey story that was on this Truth Seeker TV series, and I guess it never did air. It was scheduled to be aired, but it was canceled. The show itself was canceled, I understand. The lady that was narrating it's a British accent, as you watch the video, you see him talking about it. And I thought, finally, this is well done, and we can send this out and tell the story with some credibility. And then you have everybody coming out, David Icke and everybody. This is all fiction. It's all a hoax. It's all fictionized. Don't believe a word of it. Wow, that blew me away because people just believed what they said about it. And it never, materialized. My goodness. So in the meantime, the adrenochrome thing, Sharon Jacobs, I got to say, on the record, didn't know what it was called. She didn't call it adrenochrome, but that's exactly what she was referring to. She said that at the most high terror of these young children, their death is a kindness to them. Killing them they call it killing them with kindness. And I said, why would they torture these kids this way? And he says, because there's like this substance that's released into the bloodstream that when they kill these children, they literally suck the blood out of them. It's like vampirism. The evidence that she presented that I gave, that Gunderson's FBI agents took, this infant was pretty much all bloodless. It was completely drained of blood. There were wounds on its throat, on its femoral arteries were cut, almost severed the legs. Intestines, the viscera was all taken apart. This was what was left. And I don't know what became of that infant, but it was obviously not a child from America. It was who knows what country it came from. But in the state it was in, it was partially decomposed. Even I don't, this is real stuff. Why it just, why this would never result in an indictment? And no wonder Ted Gunderson was sick, heartsick over it. I mean, you have somebody that's the perfect whistleblower. I mean, talk about a whistleblower that comes forward with more guts than, the whistleblower in the Ukraine story, nothing. Sharon Jacobs was credible. Should have been put into a witness protection program, and the FBI, I think they tried to do that while they sought indictments, but then she ends up disappearing. I think what Ted was upset about more than anything was he didn't know who he can trust within his own agency. He didn't know who was on the take and who was part of the satanic ritual network. Valid concern. Which judge can you judge? There's nothing worse, Gunderson said. There's nothing more despicable than a dirty cop, especially a dirty federal high-level cop. He never named names, but he knew there was a problem. There's some kind of gatekeeper that always keeps anything from happening, and the agents that were working on the case with him ended up being reassigned, or one of them actually was drummed out on some trumped-up charge where he was fired from the agency. Ted told me about that. He said this is no finer, honest agent he's ever known, and he's scandalized and he's out, and he's who knows what happened to him after that. After a while, you don't want to talk about it. You see, you don't want to come out. Read what Judge Anna wrote. Let me just share this with our listening audience. You go to AnnaVonRights.com and scroll down and read a stern warning about satanic ritual abuse. Let me just share this highlight with you because it's, I get it. She writes, quote, over the past year, and I'm not exactly sure when she penned this little article, but over the past year I've received literally thousands of letters, notes, emails, and phone calls from people all hyped up about, she quotes in quotation marks, satanic ritual abuse. But they can't get their story straight. According to some, it's the Jews committing these heinous crimes, and according to others, it's Catholics or it's Muslims. Take your pick. Well, she talked to me, I told her it's Mormons, but it doesn't mean that the story's not straight. She writes, for no known reason, all three of these major religions, none of which condones child sacrifice of any kind, are all suddenly participating in satanic rites, ? And you feel my eyebrow quirking up into the stratosphere and feel all the wrinkles on my forehead folding up like a Venetian blind? Can you hear ye old Shinola sensor going off like a foghorn? There's another thing. These people speak in oxymorons. Satanic Muslim and satanic Jew and satanic Catholic. These are contradictions in terms, like sovereign citizen. Just like you can't be a sovereign and a citizen at the same time, you can't be a Satanist and a Muslim at the same time. These things are mutually exclusive. It's one religion or the other, not both. You can't be a Mormon Catholic, can you? How about a Jewish Methodist? I get what she's saying. She's being objective. And she goes on to say, in several hundred of these cases where the person seemed to be hinting at having actual factual information, instead of just expressing outrage, I have gone to step 2 and asked the obvious questions. Were you ritually abused yourself? Did you witness any such abuse firsthand? If so, are you willing to sign a sworn affidavit on penalty of perjury? Now, Judge Anna, yeah, in my case with Sharon, that's exactly what she did. About a third of the people dropping these stark hints never reply to me. They get spooked and realize that they are spreading gossip and being held to account for it, or they are the actual survivors who have lost their nerve to expose the vermin. Either way, they never come forward, so that is a dead end. Another third reply with yes, but answer. They realize that they have no first-hand knowledge and can't provide any testimony, but they nonetheless know someone who knows someone who knows someone, and that would be me. I know someone who knows someone. I do. And I tell you, it's credible. She writes, I suggest that someone get in touch with someone, have someone, the actual supposed victim, get in touch with me. If they are willing to provide a proper sworn and witnessed affidavit of probable cause or probable viable witness testimony, and again, the dial tone clicks in, and I never hear back from anyone. Judge Anna, I sure wish you'd been around in 2002, my dear. Man, you'd have been first one on the list for us to contact rather than trying to work with the FBI and David Icke and this nutcases. I mean, that are really part of the gatekeeping problem. The final reply, Judge Anna writes, the final third replies with, I can't believe you are so insensitive. She writes, insensitive to what? Unproven allegations of heinous crimes brought forward by people who are unwilling to provide any valid testimony or material evidence? She's right. I have to agree with her. She writes, I might as well get teary-eyed over every horror film produced by Hollywood, especially, Judge Anna, Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick, okay? She writes, crime, especially heinous capital crime, committed against the most vulnerable innocent members of society, which is our children, is a very, very serious matter. It isn't for pub talk, and it doesn't belong to the local grapevine along with the latest who got who pregnant scandals. If it's real, our response to it has to be real and deadly serious. So I have taken it seriously and done my part and wasted hours upon hours upon hours of valuable time, and all for absolutely nothing. Not as much as a single eyewitness, not a single ceremonial item or piece of clothing, not a drop of blood to enter into the forensics records. Now I'm going to give you all some free legal advice. If you know of or suspect or witness any kind of crime, it is your duty to report it immediately to the police. Failure to do so makes you an accomplice to that crime. See, this is exactly what was driving Sharon Jacobs. She realized, I can't continue to be silent anymore in this. I'm thinking about all these dead babies and children that are being abused across the country, the world even. This is what's driving her. I got to, I asked her specifically, did you use the knife on these children? And she wept, she cried, she says, yes, I have. I said, then you could be charged with a crime too. And she says, yes, I understand that. But hopefully I could get immunity for I'm just, she says, I'm basically held hostage. I'm forced to do this. So I hope that that will come into play. And then her response was, but really true, she said, and this is on the videotape. When the videotape she has, she says, in her tears, through her tears, she says, killing them is the kindest thing I could do. I'm killing them with kindness. It's a kindness to put them out of their misery. The torture they've been subjected to is far beyond, death silences that, and it's a reprieve for them. So that's how I keep my sanity with this, to know I'm doing them a favor. Now, eyewitness testimony that I put on that I was witness to and videotaped. Hopefully to get some indictments. And this is why Ted Gunderson was so involved. I get what Judge Anna is saying here. I really do, because it's the same frustration that Ted Gunderson. Okay, Judge Anna says she has, quote, wasted hours and hours of time. Well, with all due respect, Judge Anna, you didn't waste years and years of time like Ted Gunderson did without a single indictment. It doesn't mean it isn't real. It just means the powerful have kept it hidden. Jeffrey Epstein's a classic example of what happens if the secrets are close to being exposed. Too many people were asking too many deep probing questions about what was really going on in that pipeline of innocent children victims. Anyway, I just find it interesting when we discuss our interviews coming up with Judge Anna. I don't know if we'll go there with her. Maybe we will. There's nothing much I can say other than what, I've had hours and hours and years of the same thing, getting enough evidence to have an indictment or two issued. I've seen eyewitnesses like Sharon, destroyed physically, and it's Brandon Corey, Jude Kemper, the videographer, who I can't name his name. These people, tell them it's not real. You can't tell Brandon Corey he's a vegetable, according to, he's like a bumbling idiot now. He's like, can't even do addition. Had no memory of where he was. He didn't even know his name, didn't know who he was. Okay? It's not fiction, folks. It's real. So, if you want to know the truth, you can watch that video. Don't believe. I'm here to tell you it's not fiction. It's as real as it can get. And for what it's worth, 2020, the year 2020, the vision has to be based on understanding of really the evil that's so pernicious. If you, I submit this, if you think this is all just a bunch of crackpot nonsense, if you think we're just, wild craziness and everything's just fine, then fine. Turn your back and let this country literally go down the tubes. Let this so-called republic experiment just vanish. But then when you're in a gulag prisons and you're facing some absolute Holocaust situation where mass murders are happening, don't say we didn't try to warn you. Okay, you have to understand this is coming to a head pretty quickly, and we have, I submit, just a few years to really get a handle on it and make a difference. I submit this is why Judge Anna is doing what she's doing. I've known of her and her work for many years. I thank Dominic for making the contact, the right to understand what we are as sovereigns, understand where we lost the sovereignty. All of it's important. Probably the most important topic we can discuss on this show or any show. And I just hope and pray we can do it justice next week and probably in the weeks to come. My gut feeling is there's going to be a lot more we can discuss with Judge Anna as we go. But yeah, we'll let it unfold as we go. As long as we can keep broadcasting, keep the story behind the story going, let's see if we can make these interviews go viral. Let's see if we can just get people to get off the fence and put their head out of the sand or wherever they have their head stuck where the sun don't shine. Okay, we the people have got sovereign power. We just need to exercise it. love what she says on her website. It's Anna Von Reitz, REITZ.com. She writes, knowledge is power. It is truly power. And the ultimate civil power resides in every individual in America. Again, she says, by studying the following links on this website, in the orders presented, you will know more about freedom and what the Creator expected from us and endowed us with through His divine Son. And you will know your responsibility in that regard. You see, we have a responsibility. We do. Freedom is not free. Comes with a price. And one of my favorite quotes from Johann von Goethe, one of the philosophers, he said, no man is more hopelessly enslaved than he who falsely believes he is free. Think about that. See, Americans believe they're free. They really do. There's no problem here. Oh, I can go get a beer at my local, 7-Eleven and a six-pack and go watch the professional sports teams play, and I'm happy as a clam. Hey, we got Bowls Championship Series coming up. We can cheer for our favorite teams. All's well in the world. All's good. Can't possibly be this problematic. All these things happening. And what difference does it make? I can't make a difference anyway. I'm just one person. See, that's exactly what they want you to believe. Simple. So get educated, get knowledgeable. Judge Anna, I'm sure will be a big help, and that her website is incredibly well done. From Big Lake, Alaska. Yeah, it's kind of funny. We started talking about her website. They have an interactive location map on the website. White dots are flashing. Are visiting now. Well, when I first started looking at this, there's no white dots flashing. As we started broadcasting, I started explaining suddenly a lot of white dots. And today, right now, as I'm looking at it, we got a white dot flashing still here about Utah. We have flashing down in California. We have the tip of South Africa flashing. So somebody's listening to us, perhaps. And while we were first broadcasting, I saw some dots and what looks like the Philippine Islands. So, you guys, we'll have fun with this. For sure. I hope it makes a difference. But I want to end the broadcast tonight with, I received a blistering notice on my blog, hrod.com, by the daughter of my deceased friend, Warren Anderson. And it was basically demanding that I take any reference to Warren Anderson, her father, and the story behind the story radio show. I do not keep referencing it because what I'm saying about it, she said, all one big lie, that I never was involved with her father, and that her family, her mother, and her are incensed with my political stances that she's seen on the website, on my blog. I can only imagine what that could be. I asked her specifically, what is so offensive? Is it my stance on exposing Mormonism that offends you? Or just what? Please be specific. And as far as saying I'm lying, well, how do you know? Your mother, with all due respect, was not a party to this at all either. In fact, Warren and I would never meet and discuss this at his home with his kids there because it was topics of information that they didn't want to burden them with. We always met at his model home in the real estate area or at his office before he resigned from the Spectrum. But make no mistake, I wrote to this guy, says I was deeply involved in the content. I basically wrote her and said, listen, I have a gentleman who's doing the function that I did with your father and Steve Miner, the program director of the radio station, because I was already a radio celebrity. I already had a show. a very successful show on the broadcast. And Steve Miner says, well, rather than have you on a second time, let's me and Warren just take it and you help provide content. I basically do what Dominique has done, provide guests, provide insight, what Alex had done, just because they didn't know about it didn't mean it wasn't factual. I said, I could tell you a lot about your father. She said, well, we're trying to archive the Story Behind the Story radio shows, and I've gone through them, and you're never on there, and you never co-hosted with them. I said, just because I wasn't on the air doesn't mean I wasn't his cohort and his partner in it. And if you wish to pursue it, I'll be happy to provide you documentation through my agent at the time, BK Nelson, who I had given cassette tapes of the Story Behind the Story's format and getting it syndicated. Your father passed away in about the time I moved up to northern Utah from southern Utah, and I was deeply saddened by his passing. I considered him a close friend and a warrior for truth. So to keep his name alive and to keep our idea alive, and nobody else wanted to run with it, I continued the Story Behind the Story radio show. And I tell you, I've got, easily 50 times more content in archives, done so many shows since 2003. Anyway, be that as it may, it's amazing that they